Thanks, Andrew. Hello, everybody. It's nice to be back here again, where all the Lothian Birth Cohort reunions have taken place already. So anybody here from the Lothian Birth Cohorts or an accompanier of the Lothian Birth Cohort folks? Yeah, one or two of you. Okay, hello again. So what I want to do today is I want to talk, first of all, about the Lothian Birth Cohorts for those who don't know about them quite so well. And I think I'm going to spend about 5 minutes doing that without any slides. So first of all, the point of the Lothian Birth Cohort Studies of 1921 and 1936 is to find out why some people's brains and thinking skills age better than others. And it started out like that, but of course it broadened into health generally and to well-being more generally. There are 550 people in the Lothian Birth Cohort 1921, 1,091 people in the Lothian Birth Cohort of 1936, and the Lothian Birth Cohort 1921 are follow-up studies of the Scottish Mental Survey of 1932, and the Lothian Birth Cohort 1936 is a follow-up study of the Scottish Mental Survey of 1947. We started the Lothian Birth Cohort 1921 in 1999, and they've been seen at all ages from 79, and we still collect data, even now, in their mid-90s. In 2004, we started the younger Lothian Birth Cohort of 1936, and they've been seen at ages 70, 73, 76, 79, and we're about halfway through testing them for age 82. And it takes about 2 years because they get such intensive one-to-one testing. It takes about 2 years to get through everybody. Out of all the data that's been collected since 1999, there have been over 400 scientific publications in journals. And 2 of them are in the world's top journal, Nature, just on the Lothian Birth Cohort data. We share the data extensively, and I was going to say where the data are used, and I was almost tempted to use the strategy that my dad, when he first was in his national service, he joined the Royal Artillery, and they were all scared by the non-commissioned officer on the first night they went there, who said the next morning they had to have off by heart the places where the Royal Artillery had battle honours. Anybody know the answer? It's everywhere. So there wasn't really much to learn. And it's a bit like the Lothian Birth Cohort data. There are teams around the world using the data. In fact, it's not quite true. The only continent that are not using your data is Antarctica. We've got nobody yet working in Antarctica who uses the LBC data. The other thing I think you should be proud of is training young researchers in an area that was out of favour until many of us started looking at cognitive and brain aging. It was largely ignored compared to other chronic things like cancer and heart disease. Of course, very important, but so is the aging brain. And you can be proud of the fact that many universities have now got young researchers that were trained using the Lothian Birth Cohort data. I could mention areas in Cambridge and Oxford and London and Liverpool, not to say a lot in Edinburgh. You've even created professors from young scientists who are now in Germany and Nigeria who worked on the Lothian Birth Cohort's data. Apart from the scientific outputs, you have been the subject of a film, a play at the Edinburgh Festival, 3 books, an exhibition of photos, and many of you are now having your portraits painted by one of Scotland's top portrait painter, and that will be an exhibition in October, November in Edinburgh that you'll be hearing about. You've been in the media hundreds of times, and I'll just summarise to say you've been on primetime BBC One as a long feature at least 3 times. It's the only time my phone ever goes off is when you lot appear on the television and people say you're on the telly. So you've shown the world a great deal about what contributes to successful cognitive thinking skills and brain aging. And you've shown that there are contributions from genetics, from health, from being physically fit. It is a good idea to be fit because you're more liable to have a fit brain as well. Lifestyle factors, yes, John, smoking as well. And also psychological and social factors. You've also demonstrated very clearly that if you can keep your brain well connected, if you can keep the white matter healthy, you'll have better cognitive and brain aging. You've also, and we didn't expect to be finding this out, you've also contributed to what we know about how long people live. Your data have shown that if you score better on a 45-minute intelligence test at age 11, you're more likely to live long. You've shown us as well that if your brain looks younger than your birthday, you're more liable to live longer. You've shown us as well that if you collect less of certain marks on your DNA, you're more likely to live longer. The Lothian Birth Cohort, unexpectedly, we did not aim to do this at the beginning, has shown a lot about longevity as well as cognitive and brain aging. So what you are, before you get too big-headed about all this, you are the senior service here today. And so the other cohorts have learned a lot about you. But with being senior comes a lot of responsibility. And I wanted this, and you know how dour I am, those of you who heard me talk before. So I wanted this not just to be a celebration, but also a reckoning. So let's do a reckoning. It is Sunday. We're in the General Assembly Hall of the Church of Scotland, and we've almost all walked past John Knox. Now, I was wondering, probably like you were, what he was thinking today about the march that was happening to celebrate women having the vote, and thinking about the first blast of the trumpet against the monstrous regiment of women. So I'm now going to risk another blast of John Knox's trumpet by actually doing a reckoning on the Lothian Birth Cohort. How well do you keep the 10 Commandments in your research efforts? This is both the team, which I'm part of, and the participants. Shall we have a look? So let's change that to John Knox, okay? So he's in charge from now on, and we're going to ask how well you keep the 10 Commandments. So the first one is Lothian Birth Cohort, 1921 and 1936. You'll have no others before me. Now, I have to warn you, I'm going to be fairly contrived in some of these. Now, I know you're all waiting to get to adultery, but hang on, we'll get there eventually. You have no other studies before me. And I'm going to reckon, too, that if you get half marks, you've passed, okay? So you don't have to get all of the 10 Commandments correct. I'm making this up as I go along, as you can see. So no other studies before me. I think you meet that quite easily. This book was published in 1933. It is the report of the Scottish Mental Survey of 1932. It is the first and only, to date, complete survey of children's intelligence. Scotland tested the entire nation. And those of you in the 1921 birth cohort took this test. 87,498 children were tested on June the 1st, 1932, on the same mental test. And that's where we recruited the Lothian birth cohorts, and slightly before, the slightly smaller Aberdeen birth cohorts were tested. Scotland wasn't content to be the only country to do this, it wanted to do it again, so it did. 15 years later, it conducted the Scottish Mental Survey of 1947. And those of you in the Lothian birth cohort of 1936 took this test on June the 4th, it was a Wednesday, 1947. The Murray House Test of General Intelligence. And if it hadn't been for the fact that we discovered those books were still in existence in the late 1990s, the Lothian Birth Cohort Studies and the Aberdeen Birth Cohort Studies would never have happened. So I think you're okay to say no studies before me. Now, I know before in the commandment actually means more important than, but we're going to take this as a temporal one. So I think you're okay there. You've passed that one. Let's go back. Oh dear, you're not going to do so well on this one. So if we take the commandment, do not make for yourself an idol or an image, the Lothian birth cohorts fail miserably on this commandment. So first of all, when we first discovered some genetic contributions to lifetime cognitive change, one of our LBC 1936 participants got this gigantic photograph on page 3 of the Times. You probably remember doing this afternoon. Well, this was invented by Douglas Robertson, the photographer, at one of our reunions. This was when, everybody? Yep, 2007, well done. That was the 60th anniversary to the day that the Lothian Birth Cohort, 1936, sat the test in 1947. And Douglas thought it'd be a good idea to get everybody out to the steps and do a cheesy picture, and I thought, this is a terrible idea. How wrong I was. I've been wrong about a lot in the Lothian Birth Cohort Studies, but I was really wrong about this. This picture has been wanted so many times, and again, at the risk of inducing pride again, when the journal Science, equal top in the world with Nature, wanted to run a 4-page exclusive story on you, it used this picture as its frontispiece. That's Margaret. I said to Margaret I'd show her picture today. When Age UK was trying to raise funding for the Lothian Birth Cohort 1936, as it's done successfully since 2004, it used this picture of Margaret Lawson with herself just about the time that she sat the test at age 11, showing that this is truly a longitudinal study. This graven image is in the National Museum of Scotland. Anybody know whose brain it is? No, it is one of the Lothian Birth Cohort 1936. It's John Scott's brain, and those are his connections. He's an ex-miner, member of the Lothian Birth Cohort 1936, and you can go and see that. There's a copy outside, but there's one in the National Museum of Scotland in its display where it describes the Lothian Birth Cohort of 1936. And also, when we got the photographers in from the newspapers to take pictures of this is the one we thought they would like the best. But the photograph or the graven image that appeared in all the papers was this one. John holding a 3D print of his own brain's data. So that's actually what that brain looks like inside of his head. Now, there's a scientific point to this, because we know that people from the Lothian Birth Cohort whose brains stay bigger, who lose less of it, and whose brains are better connected, have got better thinking skills than you would have expected in older age, given their starting points. This is important to get across. And our portrait painter, Fiona Carlyle, has recently painted John as well. So we just keep on making these images, and I'm afraid you fail badly the second commandment. The third one, making wrongful use of names, not taking names in vain. Well, I'm going to confess, this is the one that defeated me. I had no good examples for this. All I could think of was when the Lothian Birth Cohort 1921 were introduced to Her Majesty, the members of the cohort and the research team were told extremely carefully that the first time Her Majesty spoke to you, you addressed her as Your Majesty, and thereafter as Ma'am, which the equerry said rhymes with ham. And we all had to remember that. But much less importantly, sometimes taking names wrongly can show both a combination of wit and insight. Now, those of you in the Lothian Birth Cohort 1936 know that you get letters from me, Ian Deary, endlessly. I'm always sending you letters and we're contacting each other. So I've known you all for the best part of 15 years. But still, I get personal letters from the Lothian Birth Cohort 1936 cohorts that look like this. Which, as I say, shows wit and insight. Yeah. So it happens all the time. But as I say, this is a commandment that I couldn't decide on. Right, let's go on to the next one. Remember the Sabbath. This is another one where you do really badly. Not only are you here today working on a Sunday, and so are we. Do you remember this reunion? I hope so, because it was only last year. It was the 70th anniversary to the day, 4th of June, 2007, 70th anniversary to the day that you sat the test in 1947. And I just simply wasn't going to miss an opportunity like that. And the reason I put this here as well is to say that I hope you all realize that you get the data results before we send them out to the scientists. We like to tell you what we've been finding at the end of a data collection. So this is the end of wave 4 of your testing. But also, I have to say, I went back to my diary of 1997, and that's what the 2 weeks looked like. And the first thing I noted about the diary, this is the University of Edinburgh diary, was it was a proper diary. It starts on a Sunday. Do you remember that, when weeks used to start on a Sunday? They've stopped doing that. They start on Mondays now. But look at that page on the 1st of June, 1997. It says 3 o'clock, Lawrence and Patricia here. That's when you were all conceived. On that afternoon, Lawrence Whalley, Professor of Mental Health at University of Aberdeen, and his wife Patricia came to my house, and we planned the Aberdeen birth cohorts and the Lothian birth cohorts on that afternoon. And by sheer coincidence, it was the 1st of June 1997, 65 years to the day since the Scottish Mental Survey in 1932 had happened, and 3 days away from the 50th anniversary of the Scottish Mental Survey of 1947. You've almost got to believe that something divine was going on there. Bill? What? It's my writing that's not very good, Bill. So, wait a minute, I've now lost my place. Oh yeah, you failed that one as well. So you're not doing very badly. You're not doing very well at all. So, honour your father and your mother. Well, Lord Coe, Sebastian Coe, said, if you want to be an international champion runner, do you know what he said? Choose your parents carefully, was the first thing. So have you obeyed that? Well, yes, you have, because we've done a lot of genetic research. One of the first things we did on the Lothian birth cohorts was to test their DNA for 610,000 different sites on their genes. And I remember the day where I had to make a call where we had to write the cheque for £700,000 to pay for that to be done. And it meant that your data went into this paper in the world's top journal, Nature. And this is one of the few scientific things I want to get across. It showed that the differences in how people's thinking skills change from age 11 to old age, about a quarter of that is due to genetics. I'll repeat it. About a quarter of people's differences in how much the thinking skill changes from childhood to old age is genetics, meaning that about 3/4 probably is environment and lifestyle. But it meant there was a bit of genetic change there as well. That could not have been done except in a cohort who had been tested in childhood and in older age, like yourselves in the Aberdeen birth cohort. That's the latest genetic thing that we've done. We weren't satisfied by testing you in 610,000 places. We've now swept your entire genome and tested it on 3 billion places. The money for that was found by a Professor David Hume. An interesting name for a professor at Edinburgh, because you remember the famous David Hume before that was denied a professorship at the University of Edinburgh because he was an atheist. He wouldn't have been speaking here. Anyway, Professor David Hume found £1 million to pay for your DNA to be tested at 3 billion sites. Those results will be coming soon. So you honoured your father and your mother. Now, thou shalt not kill. Well, will you allow me a bit of bending on this one? You have discovered a huge amount about survival and death. 3 things. In 2001, Lawrence Whalley and I published in the British Medical Journal for the first time that IQ, intelligence from childhood, is associated with how long people live, with one exception that we found, that men who died in active service in World War II tended to be higher on the mental test score in the Scottish Mental Survey in 1932 than men who didn't die in active service. And then last year came really the mother of all of these linkage studies. What we did there was we took the Scottish Mental Survey of 1947, the one sat by the Lothian Birth Cohort 1936, and whereas in 2001 we had linked everybody who took the test in Aberdeen, this time we did the entire country. We linked all 87,498 folks who took the test to how long they had survived or whether they were still alive. And what that shows you up there is, if you go from the left-hand side, that's the people who scored lowest on the test. And if you go down and down and down, what that shows you is the higher people scored on the mental test at age 11, the more likely they are to be alive and the less likely they are to have died. The people who scored in the very highest are only 40% as likely to have died as the folk who took it later. So you've learned a great deal about survival from the Lothian Birth Cohort Studies and the Scottish Mental Surveys. But I think the thou shalt not kill thing is best exemplified, and you pass this one with flying colours. The last time you came in, you generously gave blood cells that are now being transferred into fetal stem cells, which can be converted into any cell type in the body, which researchers are going to be using for experiments to see why some of you are aging so well. Do you remember Professor Siddharthan Chandran at the last reunion telling us all about that? Well, this is what the cells look like when they're cultured. This is a great gift to the study and to research, and it's also forever. So thou shalt not kill. You pass that one with flying colours. Okay, right, this isn't so easy. I thought, what am I going to do with this one? Well, the truth is, you give data so generously, it's not right if it's not used properly. So if other groups of researchers get in touch from completely different places, we get into bed with them. All right. God, they're a hard audience. This one, it's like the Glasgow Pavilion. Right. If Dr. Sharif Karama from the famous Montreal Institute for Neurological Science had not got in touch to say that he had a new method of calculating how thick your grey matter was on the outside of your brain, we wouldn't have been able to show this. Those yellow bits and red bits are the bits of the brain where, in your Lothian Birth Cohort brains, the grey matter is thinner in people who smoked. Would you agree that it's quite widely distributed? It is. It is. It shows smoking doesn't just affect cognitive function, it's got an effect on the grey matter of the brain. And this is another stunning one. Dr. James Cole got in touch with us from Imperial College London, and James said, I've got a new way of working out how old people's brains look. I said, oh yes, what do you mean? He said, well, the Lothian Birth Cohort, they all had their brains scanned for the first time, 700 of you, at age 73. Can you see the red spikes? Right, look at those red spikes. That's the spread of your chronological age. That's the age you were when you got your brain scanned at age 73. Is that clear enough? Very narrowly about 73. The blue bars are you as well. That's the spread of the ages that your brains look like. And some of you have got brains that only look 50-year-old when you were 73, and please tell me what the secret is, because I want to know it. My brain's a lot older than that now. But some of you, it has to be said, at 73, already had a brain that looked more than 100 years old. So can you get the idea of how valuable you are? Because you're so close in age, we can look at that closeness and say, but do the bodies and the brains and the thinking skills look as if they're much more spread out? And why is that? Why are some people looking 90-year-old when they're only 70-year-olds? And why are some people carrying a 50-year-old brain? It's just not fair. But when they're already 73. So you get the point. That was really important research. And if it hadn't been somebody from completely outside of our team asking to do it, we'd never been able to do it ourselves. So you don't pass that one either, but for a very good reason. Thou shalt not steal. Well, I want to deflate you a wee bit. For a lot of the research we do, there just simply are not enough of you. There's 1,500 of the 2 Lothian cohorts. And for our genetic research, we need far more. Did any of you see this report? A week past Wednesday, we're all in the newspapers again, that Gail Davies and the team had discovered 148 sites on the genes that contribute to cognitive functions or thinking skills. However, there are 1,500 of you. We had to multiply that up to 300,000 people to get the results that resulted in these newspaper reports, these genetic results. How did we do it? We stole or we used other people's data from 57 different studies around the world. But because of the quality of your data, they trusted themselves to give the data to the team in Edinburgh to work with. So what you ended up with was this. I'm not going to explain this. It's called a Manhattan plot. But basically, there's a wee red line there, and every dot above the red line is somewhere on your genes that are related to how good your thinking skills are. This is called a Manhattan plot because when you get really juicy results with 300,000 people, it looks like the Manhattan skyline. When we tried it with your lot's data, it looked like Morningside instead of Manhattan. There was nothing there at all. There was a 2 or 3 bedroom tenement, but there was no skyline. Right, we're just about finished. Thou shalt not bear false witness. This is one that you pass with flying colours because what we've instilled in all of the team is never to exaggerate the findings. You must have seen in the papers, they're always saying, eat this type of diet and it'll keep your brain healthy. Yeah, you're nodding away. Do Sudoku, it'll keep your brain healthy. What I've instilled in the team is always to play down the results. And that's why when Dr. Janie Corley and Dr. Simon Cox wrote this paper last year, it came out this year, Healthy Cognitive Aging in the Lothian Birth Cohort Studies, Marginal Gains, not Magic Bullet. That means If you put yourself on the right side of all the factors, if your diet's about right, if you're not smoking, if you're fairly physically fit, in fact, why am I remembering them? Because I put them up. Not smoking, being physically fit, being more educated, having good health, having more physical activity, having a posh occupation, being bilingual, having a well-connected brain. If you get your side on the right side of all of these relatively small effects, you can give yourself the best chance of thinking well when you get older. That, by the way, reviewed over 200 of your studies in that review paper. Not coveting. Well, how are we going to deal with this one? Well, I thought the best way was this. When you run a cohort study, all the time you're thinking, what did I not put in that I wanted to? And please, can you all pick up these little concertina cards that describe the Lothian Birth Cohort Studies? But there's one page on it that shows the various things that the Lothian birth cohorts have been tested on. And you would be quite right to look at me and say, how could you ask your team to collect any more data on? Because the famous researcher, Professor Timothy Salthouse in Virginia, he's probably the world's top cognitive aging researcher, he said, the Lothian Birth Cohort 1936 is the most intensively studied group of people in the entire world. But every week we come up with something that we wish we had asked you a while ago. We wished also we had more data from the time that you were 11 to the time that you followed you up at 70. So you're always coveting on the one hand, but always thinking, no, but wait a minute, there's a huge amount of data here and we shouldn't be covering. So I'm kind of split on that one. So, how has the Lothian Birth Cohort 1921 and 1936 done? I just wonder, does that do that? Oh, it does. That's nice. Right. How does it do when it comes to the 10 Commandments? Have you passed? 4.5 out of 9. I'll settle for that. I think that's okay. I think that's cool. However, don't go away thinking that you're that great, because pride is one of the 7 deadly sins. And we know about diet as well. You've got to get that right, so don't be gluttonous. And also, I can see another talk coming here, because you think about sloth as well. You've got to be physically active to stay fairly fit. So, John Knox, I think we can do something else for you. So coming soon, the Lothian Birth Cohorts, 7 deadly sins. Right, I think that'll do. So, ladies and gentlemen, those are the Lothian Birth Cohorts, 10 Commandments. Thank you.